This video is about increasing engagement in learning activities by increasing task completion. The objectives are to demonstrate the relationship between task completion and motivation, and the relationship between motivation and environmental conditions, and also identifying the ways we can change those conditions to increase motivation. What is motivation? Is motivation a condition, or is it derived from the conditions? Often we think of motivation as a state of mind. We might look at the task in front of us and just not feel like doing it. So if we think of motivation as affecting our behavior, we may not consider how the conditions are affecting our motivation. Certainly the conditions do affect our motivation. The amount of effort involved in completing a task and also the amount of reward for doing it affect our motivation. When tasks are difficult, that may reduce our motivation to perform them. Some things that make tasks difficult include a person's current ability or know-how in relationship to that task. If we have to learn how to do it on top of doing it, we may feel less motivated to do it. A task will be more difficult to complete if a person is struggling to focus or concentrate on that task. Distractions in the environment, such as the TV, telephone, or radio, can make focusing difficult, and that can reduce motivation. How much we like or dislike a task will also affect our motivation. We may find it very difficult to get started on that task or remain on that task in order to finish it if we really dislike it. Having a task that's going to take up a lot of time may also reduce the motivation to start the task. Sometimes it's just seeing the amount of the task that just looks to be so much to do is overwhelming, and that will reduce motivation. If these are the conditions that are affecting motivation, then we can change these conditions to improve motivation. We can match the task to the person's ability level if we provide some help or coaching, or even modify the task to make it less difficult. We can try to reduce distractions by removing them from the environment, or maybe we're sitting beside the person helping them with concentration by directing their attention to what they should be looking at. That can improve motivation. If motivation is related to the task being something less preferred, we could sandwich that activity or task, or in other words, embed that task between preferred activities. Let's say the student likes to color and use the computer. We could arrange the activity schedule so that it begins with some type of coloring and ends with some type of computer activity. In the middle, the student would be asked to do the least preferred activity. Let's say that's learning to read sight words. It would be easier for the student to get started because the student would be beginning with coloring, a preferred activity, and not with the sight words. And it would be easier for the student to stay motivated because the student would be ending with a preferred activity. In this case, it would be the computer. We can also just reduce the length of time a task will take by maybe breaking it up into smaller chunks and adding in breaks, and allowing the student to take breaks when the student asks for one. That can increase motivation as well. We might be changing all those other conditions and still have some difficulty with motivation. So we might add on some incentives for completing tasks by providing some rewards for the effort of engaging in the task. There are some things we should keep in mind when adding incentives to try to increase motivation. First, we need to determine what the rewards will be for completing tasks, because we want to make sure that whatever we're offering as a reward for task completion is going to be rewarding. So we need to know what the student's preferences are. We can observe that by just observing what the student chooses to do when the student is able to choose, or we can interview the student to find out what those preferences would be. Then we determine what the student wants to earn by completing tasks. Next, we need to determine what is expected and how much of it is expected to earn the reward. We want to make sure the reward is worth the effort. So we don't want to expect too much or too little. In other words, we're trying to match the effort to the reward as best as possible. We also want to make sure the student can see clearly what is expected to earn the reward, what exactly the student needs to do, and how much the student needs to do in order to earn that reward. Using a chart can make it clear that progress is being made toward the reward, and that's motivating. So in conclusion, there are environmental conditions that affect a person's motivation, and there are ways to change these conditions to improve motivation.